Hello, sister.
Well, hello.
Ooh, we are coming in today. Well, we're going to point out both of us are overcoming a cold. So if you hear us cough or our voices start to give way, we are on the up and up, y'all. And we could not miss today's episode and sitting down with another lovely guest. And we're so stoked to have on Shoshanna French. Hello, sister.
Hi, thank you guys for not sleeping today during our time to be together and have this conversation, which would have been totally reasonable given that you are, yes, on the up and up, but still nursing cold. So thank you. I'm really excited to talk with you, both of you.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
I think it's we were both energized, right? Like we're not going to nap through this conversation. For
No.
all of all of those out there that are tuning in, welcome into another episode of Still. And let me introduce Shoshanna to you, just a little brief overview before we just really dive into this woman that stands for all things standing for your intuition. She is the founder of Simple Spirit, also a keynote speaker and executive coach to 7-figure, 8-figure business owners, CEOs, and business professionals. And you generate some epic results for those that you work with, Shoshana. And I'm really excited to dive into all things intuitive decision making and how we can continue to listen to our intuition despite external noise of all of this fluff and foof that we might be hearing from others, specifically those that we find as our mentors or our teachers or our guides, and then who knows, I'm sure we'll also tap on some authentic communication because these are all things that I know matter highly to you. So welcome in.
Thank you. I love the conversation for practical application of intuition. And a lot of people think that there is some I don't know, secret handshake or required spiritual beliefs to tap into intuition, and there's not. And so it's been my mission for, I don't know, many years, 19 years in business, but certainly for the 29 years I've been studying and practicing, to finding a way to talk about intuition that is less exclusive and more inclusive.
Love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that really resonates with me too, because I laugh at how I used to be shy to embrace this title of priestess. It's like, oh no, because then people will think, whatever they're going to think, or what I thought of people who call themselves that, or what have you. And it's like, here's the reality. Is that me? Absolutely, 100%. And my Virgo me is very practical. So I've called myself the practical priestess. And so I love that you're on talking about practical application of these gifts that we all can tap into. And it doesn't have to be so esoteric or far-fetched that it's only reserved for a few. Because our audience, our community is all about being inclusive and not making anyone feel like, well, this doesn't apply to you or you're not a part of this. So love that you're sharing that in the way that you're sharing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's
oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Jill.
well, I was gonna piggyback on that of like the secret handshake thing that you're saying. Stacey and I kind of like, we just don't put up with this shit, to be very honest, where there becomes like a hierarchy of inside your spiritual groups, inside your leadership groups. And I mean, we are fierce with it, so it's like, y'all, there's not a secret handshake. Well, you could create one with your intuition. You can do that. You can do that with yourself.
If that brings your soul joy, go ahead.
Yeah, well, let's dive into this. Like, let's just go straight into it around like external noise and Stacey sharing of like, yeah, calling myself the practical priestess and like following these absolute truths inside of us despite others' opinions and voices and all the things.
Well, you guys are
Yeah.
the first people I'm sharing this with. From like sometime in 2022, I had the opportunity to create a really, really big contract for leading some communication and intuitive training for a company. And I'd never had, it was like literally the largest company, like the largest contract I'd ever done in the life of my business. I spent 3 days in Texas with a client and we built it. And then she pitched it and they declined. And it threw me for a pretty hard loop because in my mind, and I mean this, my mind, not my intuition to be clear, because intuition does not mislead us, but in my mind, I connected corporate work with where the big contracts were and not the work I'd been doing that I loved that was actually generating the biggest year I'd ever had in 2022, which was all one-on-one work. And so I went about to try to, because this is what we do, right? I'm sure you guys get this. My brain decided to make true the thing that I made up, the belief in that moment, which was, let me go after corporate. And so I spent most of last year pursuing corporate contracts and developing a part of my business that, while it's super fun and I think it's so important, is not actually the purpose that I'm on the planet for. So as you can imagine, it did not go great. It was a lot of work and not a lot of results.
Man.
And so all of a sudden, where I'm normally really grounded in my knowledge of myself and like, oh, here I am and I'm so clear, I was like, oh no, what do I do? And so then guess what, right? Like I sent that out and we could talk about it from a brain perspective or intuitive, doesn't matter, energetic or whatever. I sent out a feeling of despair and desperation and lack of clarity. And what happened is I attracted a lot of people who had their 10 cents and 5 cents and 2 cents to give me. And none of it helped. Not one lick of it. Because when we lose alignment with our own truth and we're listening to other people's advice, because that's what it was. And they were professional, smart people. So I'm not knocking these people who really did try to help me.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't in alignment with my truth. So even with their great advice, because I was not in alignment, I was not hearing my own intuition. I was using my brain. And logic is amazing for solving problems and avoiding making mistakes. And so I didn't want to make another mistake like I did in the fall of 2022, right? And do all this work for a contract that wasn't going to come to fruition. I wanted to avoid doing that. And I was trying to fix my access to larger contracts, whatever it was I was trying to do. But I just logic the shit out of it. And it did not work great. Last year was the lowest revenue I've ever had in 19 years of business. So,
wow.
and this is not surprising, right? Given that I was not listening to have highest year right next to lowest year. That tells you a little something going on, right? So, everybody's advice became external noise. And some people were like, oh, it's the economy, like these are the typical things that people say to you. It's not you. There's more people in the marketplace now. You're not the only intuition expert. I mean, like people tried to say the things to make me feel better. Really, though, it's a little bit like, I'm going to age myself here, but the Peanuts cartoon when the teacher talks, wah, 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 wah. That was all the noise. So that's what happened. And I haven't shared that publicly yet. People that are my trusted advisors as far as business goes, they know about it because I'm just coming out of that and feel back in alignment. And I definitely don't think I would have been ready to share about it until I feel like I do today. Like, oh no, we're clear. Now we're back in alignment. Now I can hear intuition. But man, it definitely gives me a deeper sense of compassion for when people feel super, super stuck. And it causes that whole thing of desperation and fear. And then you're looking everywhere for an answer except in here. And I just couldn't hear. I could hear for other people. It wasn't like I wasn't doing my work. Last year I was, but I couldn't hear for myself. So I just want to say, as somebody who has been training themselves for 29 years, that if you try to use your intuition and you're just like, what the heck, it is not communicating to me at all, it is probably something else and it's not your intuition. And it's helpful to do that inner work to know. So that's what happened. And I'm out of that like spiral of that, where I was, but I can really distinguish now where I couldn't, what noise sounds like.
Mm. Ooh. Ooh, that hit me. All of it is an incredible story. Thank you for sharing with us first. And thank
You're
you for
welcome.
being so transparent and vulnerable. I'm hearing a few things. Well, first is the cost of being out of alignment, like the cost of that. You suffered a monetary cost, of course, but also it sounds like, yeah, there was a lot of rework, extra work, efforting, and like a whole bunch of stuff that just costs. And you're like, what the? That's not working. And then getting yourself right in alignment. This is genius. Getting yourself right in alignment. I heard you saying, once I did that, I could hear the external voices as voices that I could use my own discernment to decide what to do versus before. No, it just was a lot of outside noise and I'm just following. I'm just going with it and not trusting. That kind of shift, like for those who wouldn't consider themselves intuitive, who are brain based, logic based, that kind of shift that you created for yourself, I heard you say you do the inner work. Like, well, what is the inner work for someone to make that kind of shift if they're in that brain space and hearing the noise and can't distinguish for themselves?
I was going to answer that, but I wondered if Jill wanted to reflect anything first because I don't want to jump over her.
Oh, no. We good. Higher selves are all speaking over here.
Awesome. Okay.
That's
So,
when I start doing a head tilt, and then I'm like, sister's got it. She's on it. We solid. Same thought pattern.
love that. Okay, now I know what the head tilt means. When I do that, it means they're talking to me. So whenever I'm like, oh, I'm here. The inner work. So, people in the spiritual realm talk about shadow work a lot. And I think people overuse that word, not fully understanding what shadow work means. I think some people think shadow work is about like battling your shadows or something like that. But there are parts of us in the dark, and that just means they're unseen. They're like unexcavated. And so I think a lot of inner work is about the excavation of what's unseen. That to me is a large part of shadow work. I was ordained as a high priestess recently, but I was originally was ordained as not ordained, but initiated as a priestess back in 2008. And when that happened, what became my perspective on life really changed. And then again, as a high priestess, my perspective changed again, which is that it's not like the excavation is ever going to end because we change, the world changes. And so when that happens, then you have to excavate again and go, oh, okay, wait, hold on. Now the world looks like this. So excavation is part of the inner work. And what I can say for myself is that there are things that you don't want, that I did not want to see about myself, and doing the shadow work last year. And so I just I didn't see those things. And mainly because I didn't like them. And that's the hard part about doing inner work. And so when I finally realized sometime in the fall that things were not going well, I was like, wait, hold on a second. This excavation can't be done by myself. Like, I'm going to have to find somebody else with a shovel who can see what I can't see and will reflect what what I'm unwilling to deal with. And, I'm sure everybody who listens to your podcast knows that all of us go through these transformational or awakening experiences where how we view ourselves changes. And then we would even say we become kind of a new version of ourselves. And we often ask, what do we believe? But we don't ask why. And I feel like that's part of the excavation we had to do, was not just what do I believe now, who I am now, but why do I believe that? And so that was some of what there was to do. And it was really deeply uncomfortable. And it looked like cutting ties with some opportunities, cutting ties with some old clients, and rewriting my entire website. Because, that's what you do when you start doing shadow work. You're like, oh, that doesn't describe me at all. So
Mm.
that's some of the inner work. Now, for the Virgos listening, I'm a Virgo, just like Stacè is. So for the practical side of things, it looked like journaling. It looked like journeying. It looked like regular meditation practice. It looked like moving my body more frequently. It looked like working with a nutritionist so that I was fueling and nourishing my body in a way that that part was handled while I was going really deeply inward and trying to understand what happened and where I was and where I wanted to go. So that's what it looked like practically.
Mm. I
Wow.
think this is such a potent, powerful story, and thank you for sharing it on the heels of just doing your own unraveling to re-sew back together in this new version. Because we both, and I know there's a lot of you out there in our community tuning in, that you might be just starting on a new idea. You might be starting in a new role. You might be starting that business, launching that business. And, I know a lot of the clients that I'll work with do end up starting their businesses. And you can find yourself getting so lost when you have big projects in front of you. And like, let me get feedback. Feedback's great. And there's also I'm hearing from you, like this internal knowing, like, well, what do you think about this logo? What do you think about these colors? What do you think about? And I mean, Stacè and I learned that, which we're all very, high practice, I think, in trusting our intuition and the guidance. But when we were launching Still, this podcast, we talked about this on another episode, but like marketing materials and colors and we shared with like no one, maybe one or two people, because we did not need the feedback in regards to branding or the logo or like the look and feel and energetics in that way. And I see a lot of people, and I'm sure the clients you work with come to you because it's like lost in the weeds of needing that like affirmation from others, like the
Mhm.
permission from others instead of giving that self permission. So if there's like one like really easeful thing that a person out there listening, maybe they're in the middle of this and there is a lot of noise. Because listen, there is. You could be buying a house, there's a lot of freaking noise. You can
Yeah.
be making a big move and or wherever you might find yourself planning a big event. Like there's going to be a lot of external noise. Like, what is one thing every day maybe you could share to just like, if you're watching us over on YouTube, like I'm bringing my hand into center space to like find this alignment.
I just want to say first, because I think it's an important piece to add, and then I'll answer your question directly. So what can happen, especially with leaders, whether they're a leader in an organization that they started or somebody else's organization, is there is the, whatever you want to call it, the moment of inspiration, the connection to the muse, connection to the divine, whatever that is, where like creating Still, I bet was like this for you guys. We were like, yes. And then all actions after that are so clear. But there comes a moment in the movement forward of any vision we have where we go from that connection to intuition to logic. And then logic wants us to do like linear strategy, tactics. And sometimes it just means we disconnect from that initial kind of inspiration we had. And then it means we're not hearing our intuition anymore. And so mostly who I work with is leaders who have, just exploded onto the scene and really created quite a ruffle in the feathers of people. They're disruptors and they're big visionaries. And then they reach a moment where they don't know how to get any further than that, kind of like you said. So they start looking for validation outside of themselves. But the most important part is they lose connection to that inner clarity that had them create whatever the thing was in the first place. So it's okay to ask 40 people on your board what the best way to raise funds for your nonprofit is if you're really clear that no matter what they say, it has to be in alignment with your truth. But if you are where I was last year and you just feel so confused, like, you know, like you're on a merry-go-round and someone just keeps spinning you around and around, it's all really blurry, then anybody else's feedback is someone turning the freaking merry-go-round again, and you're just so ill by the, you know, nonstop flood of information. We live in a time of high information. So it's, and a lot of that information is conflicting. That's what I noticed last year. I asked for feedback and people did their best. But do you know, great people who are super smart would give me feedback and it'd be absolutely the opposite of each other. Do you know how freaking confusing that is when you are aligned?
Oh, yeah.
Let alone when you're not.
Well, but I think that's such a good point, but because this is very important, is in regards to us as humans and our perspectives. So you can go have two mentors. Maybe you're paying huge amounts of money, or these mentors are really well known in their fields. And this is all the human perspective based on their experiences and the lens in which they're coming to you from in that exact moment. Because I bet you could go back to them this year, same time, they might give you different feedback. Like they might give you a whole different perspective. And we forget that. We just forget it.
And here's what I
That's
love
so
that you
true.
just said. Like, this is the importance of intuition. That's the importance of it, because it can also guide you when it's time to find a new mentor. It can guide you to experts. It doesn't just guide you to your inner knowing, because I don't know, like, I don't know the technical whereabouts for my, you know, certificate for the privatization of my website. Like, I don't know that. However, my intuition can guide me to the right web guy, because when I didn't use my intuition, the last web person I had 8 years ago, they took my website down retaliatorily, which was my mistake because I just didn't trust my intuition. So I really use it when I choose experts now, because I'm like, whoa, hold on. So to answer your question, unless you had something to say, Stacey, because I don't want to interrupt your thought flow either.
No, keep going. Keep going. The thoughts are here and they won't leave.
Okay.
So it's all good.
Okay.
Keep going. Keep going.
So I created an acronym because I think it's super easy for people to remember. And this is the thing you do every day. It's called PALS, PALS. Pause, ask, listen, strengthen. So what that means, P stands for pause. When we are in that space of like being on one of those little merry-go-rounds, like when we were a kid, or a tire swing and we're going around, we actually have to stop all forward motion, stop asking other people, and just pause, get fully present in the moment. That's pausing. If people that are listening to this don't have a practice for pausing every day, find one. How do people pause? You can move your body. You can journal. You can meditate. You can do breath practice. There's lots of different ways to pause. But if you didn't do the other three letters and all you did every day was practice pausing, that would begin to shift your focus from your brain and into your body. And our bodies are where our intuition comes in. It's where it's translated. So if you can get your brain to quiet down so that you can actually hear, whether you feel or know or see or hear, then you'll be able to hear it over the noise. Not only the noise externally, but also the noise inside of your own crazy monkey mind.
You and me, even I call that the inner chaos.
Totally.
That we have, that we try to be in denial about. I'm like, no, it's chaotic in there. We want to present to the world like we've got it together. That's why we go get the mentors, the coaches, the experts to guide us so we can go out like we've got it together. You ain't got it together in there, because if you did, you wouldn't be looking outside for anything else. We don't have it together, and it's okay that we have the inner chaos as long as we can recognize, like, ooh, I'm in the middle of some inner chaos right now. I'm on that merry-go-round and it's just twisting and twisting. I do get to just stop. I sometimes will text to my mother when stuff is like that. I'm like, stop the world. Like, just stop the world and let me collect myself. And then we can go from there. I still may not have the solutions, but I'm so much more aligned and I have clarity to know the next step. I don't have to know the next 10. I just need to know what this next one is and trust that what's been given for me is for me. So if an expert then tells me, hey, do that, I'm like, not in alignment. It was very clear to me that my next step is this. Thank you for that. And there might be pieces of that I can use somewhere. Like I'm going to follow the breadcrumbs of my own intuition first, and then everything else can like get in where it fits in. I love that you're giving this practical application of intuition and the whole pals thing. I love this because especially if you're not in this like what they call the woo-woo world. I'm going to come up with another name, but if you're not really in that woo-woo world, the messages that are out there, I mean, let's be honest, the messages that are out there, like meditate for 2 hours a day, fast for 7 days a week, like do all the things. And what you're offering is like, hey, let's cut to the chase. First and foremost, and maybe most importantly to do first, is to pause. Now we can do the rest of it. It's a short acronym. It's very actionable, and anybody can use it for anything. Like this isn't just, I want to tap into my intuition because I need some, messages from on high. Like, look, what do I want to have for lunch? I'm trying to be healthier. Am I going to have that burger or tuna? Like you can use it for anything. And
That's like the best.
I for one, love
best
that.
place to start, I think. I think it's a good place to start, y'all. Do some intuitive eating. And I think this is a good place too to we're gonna like pause. This we all get our 2 parts. Yeah. I did not share that with you in the beginning. So we're gonna pause our pals. We are going to pause. We're gonna come. I think this has just been a really great intro into how y'all can cut through this external noise. And what I'm feeling is we will probably roll into, because y'all might be out there like, yeah, cool. And I have family and I have the board and I have a leadership team and I have people that report or also get to make decisions. So it's like feeling important to, we'll continue with you, Shoshanna, on like, well, how do we bring our intuition into the collective to still move something forward? So y'all can tune in next week to listen to that. Thank you so much for your time, Shoshanna.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Shoshana.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Love you. Bye.